Good evening, Sean. This is Gail. How are you?
I'm good, Gail. How are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Hi, Greg and Talisha. I believe that Lucia Marquez Reagan will be one of the presenters. We are waiting for Hanif Yadzi to join us. And then he also sent me another name. Hi, Lucia, that's you?
Hi, yes,
Did I get that right?
you did. Thank you.
Okay. And then he sent me somebody named C. Evans. Are we waiting for a C. Evans?
Yes, Chelsea's not going to be joining us, so it'll just be me and Hanif. Yeah,
Okay.
then we'll be ready to go.
Great, thank you. And before we go all the way live, but I'll let you know that I just found out today, it looks like we will not have a planning fellow on this particular project. That's why I tried to appoint you, Greg.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, too bad. I got the flooding project got selected, but we didn't have any takers on City of Yes this time around.
All right, fair enough.
Nobody wanted to do a tree pit survey either.
Excited to hear we got a planning fellow for the flooding, though.
Yeah, no, that I was pleased about that too. And they come highly recommended by Lucy Philpott, who did our Newkirk Plaza project and who was great. So I have high hopes.
All right, good. Yeah, no, they can create some mapping and really dig into it. I think that'll help. I'm sure.
Yeah, and I just I'll keep making public service announcements until you're ready to start. But there will be a town hall convened by Councilmember Joseph on Tuesday, the 14th, at PS 217, and it looks like the whole slew of agencies, city and state level, will be there. So we'll get to promoting it probably tomorrow. I think they're going to have some flyers ready, but we'd really like to get the word out and have a really good turnout at that, and try to hold some of these agencies accountable, but and also see if there's ways for them to collaborate in a more effective way.
Everyone?
Hey, folks. Man, all I gotta say is the administration got jokes. I clicked open the links and I said, oh, 664 pages? Okay.
Just to be clear, Lucia is the only person speaking tonight? Presenting?
Hanif just joined us.
Uh,
So if the two of you could let us know who's going to take the lead, and then the co-chairs can get us started.
Hanif, you're on mute.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll be setting things up shortly.
So you will be speaking tonight?
Yes, that's correct. I'll be presenting on the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity Proposal.
Okay, and so will you, Lucia?
No. Lucia should be logged on, I
Yeah,
believe.
she's here.
She'll be, yeah, supporting this evening as well.
Okay. And Hanif, just so that I know that I have your name right, Hanif Yazdi?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies in advance. Normally, on Teams and other platforms, we can have a virtual background, but I wasn't able to do that on WebEx, so you're going to have to bear with me and my Lego collection here tonight.
That's okay.
That's all right. You're a good guy for Lego.
All right. Once a city planner, always a city planner. There you go.
I assume you're a guru for IKEA as well, because my theory is that Lego got us ready for IKEA. So,
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much for letting me join tonight. Lucia, we have you on?
Yes, here.
Check. Okay, just checking really quickly. All right.
Should we wait a few more minutes or should we go ahead and get started?
I'm ready to go, but I defer to you if you want more members to arrive or you want folks to join us.
Okay, Sean and Greg, should we wait like 2 more minutes? 6:35? No? Yeah. We can get started now. It sounds
Yeah.
it seems like
Yeah, why don't we go ahead?
okay. All right.
It's 600 pages, so
We've got a lot to get through. Okay. So I
That's-
hope everybody has their snacks and you know everything that they need because we got a lot to get through tonight. So good evening, everybody. I'm Talisha Sainville along with Gregory Alvarez. We are the Housing and Land Use Committee. Thank you for being here this evening with us. You could have been anywhere else in the world, so we're happy that you're here with us tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about the city of Yes, for which we have, is it 60 days after today to put in 30 days? 60 days to put in some more comments?
I believe it's 60. I'll go over the timeline in more detail during the presentation. So for
Okay.
everybody.
Okay, great. Perfect. So tonight we'll have presenting some of the city of Yes, Hanif Yazdi, from the New York City Department of City Planning. I hope I said that right.
Yes, that's correct.
So you can take it away, Hanif. We also have, well, before you do take it away, I just want to let everybody know that we also have Lucia Marquez Reagan from New York City Planning also on the call with us. All yours, Hanif.
Perfect. All right, let me figure one thing out. Lucia, just a question. Is it possible for you to display the presentation?
Yes, I can quick share my screen.
All right. Just so that all right, is that let me know when that's all shared up.
Apologies, 1 second. As Hanif
No,
mentioned earlier.
I'm putting you on the spot tonight.
Oh
so.
no, it's as Hanif mentioned earlier, WebEx is one of the rarer of the platforms. So
it's the only one the city pays for.
makes sense. Okay, I'll try to get this up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I did make
Apologies
you
for
the
delay.
presenter, so your share button, the little folder with the arrow at the bottom, should be good to go.
I guess while we're waiting, I'll just say that I'll drop in the link to the City of Yes into the chat, just in case anybody wants to look at it as we go along.
We won't be going over the full 600 pages tonight. Just
Maybe if you would just start with the outline of the sort of the timing. Do you have that without without a screen share?
we can, yeah, we can go ahead and do that. One moment here.
Otherwise, I'll begin to commentate that that Community District 10 has sent out letters to Brooklyn boards and maybe beyond, expressing a concern about the timeline for such a long and dense and complicated proposal. And so there is an effort afoot to build some momentum for an extension. I think they requested 90 days, and I don't know if that request has landed at DCP yet, but I know that there is an effort afoot to buy some more time. And with that, look, the screen has been shared. That's
All
how
right.
to quiet down. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lucia. Didn't know we needed the desktop app to share the screen, so I appreciate you jumping in. Okay, thank you, everybody. With that, I'm going to get started tonight. Thank you all for taking the time to hear about our proposal this evening. I'm going to try to wrap this up in about 35 minutes, and then we'll get into questions. I want to invite you to share your perspectives about the proposal. Yes, I'm with the department, but I didn't write the proposal. Please feel free to express your opinions about it. I'll record them to the best of my ability. We'll jot things down. We'll make sure that we raise them up the chain. And we'll have a fruitful, hopefully, conversation this evening about what we like and, what we're excited about, what we'd like to see happen differently, and so on. So I'm Hani Fiazi, as I mentioned. I'm a borough planner with the City Department of City Planning. I'm assigned to Community Board 14. And with that, we'll just get into it. So the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, as you know, is one of 3 citywide initiatives to modernize and update our city's zoning regulations to support small businesses, create affordable housing, and promote sustainability. So this is the first one to support small businesses. You heard about the carbon neutrality proposal previously. So this is about economic opportunity, and you'll be hearing a housing one later in the year as well. So let's go to the next slide. So the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity is the second in the sequence of citywide reforms to our zoning resolutions. The other 2 proposals, as you know, are carbon neutrality and housing opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about the engagement timeline that folks were asking about earlier. So the zoning, this is slide 5, okay. So we've been engaging so far with our stakeholders, and we know that folks maybe need a refresher here, but I'm going to go over sort of the timeline here. So we've been engaging with many stakeholders over the last year and a half. We'll be asking small business owners, chambers of commerce, business improvement districts, industrial service providers, and other stakeholders across the city ways that the zoning might be getting in the way of establishing or expanding businesses. So we've met so far, DCP staff have, with over 100 groups. We've had 5 public information sessions so far, and have heard from countless New Yorkers about the challenges they face. This proposal, in many ways, has been shaped by a lot of those conversations, and it will be shaped moving forward by the ones we have tonight as well. And so you can see kind of that timeline. There's the kickoff. There's the 1 and 2 info sessions in October. There'll be more info sessions in June, July of 2023. And then another info session, the 5 happened in September 2023. And then this is the referral period. So we'll do kind of a deep dive into the proposal some more tonight as well. A lot of what we've heard from those stakeholders over the course of those conversations is that the city can be a challenging place to run a business, dealing with government regulations, a lot of frustrating, slow, confusing, and sometimes seemingly illogical regulations in place governing businesses, and that this environment has contributed to the city being sort of less vibrant, having fewer people able to start a business, having vacant storefronts, having one or more businesses have to leave their neighborhood, and having to leave the city altogether in order to expand. So our rules governing business, many of which are more than 60 years old, are holding our businesses back by either restricting them outright from locating or regulating how they do their business with some sort of old or complicated rule that's just not being clear in ways that cost businesses time and money. Our overarching vision for this initiative is to make sure that our zoning works for our economy and not against it. So as a result of this work, we want to have the zoning resolution that's more simple, more adaptable, and more modern. So the question is, how do we achieve this? Well, first, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow. The main way we propose to do this is by lifting zoning barriers so businesses can be closer to their customers. Second, we want to support growing industries by reducing obstacles for emerging business types, which can help emerging businesses thrive across the city, create jobs. Third, we want to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring that businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Fourth, and finally, we want to create new opportunities for businesses to open in the future by creating new kinds of zoning tools that can boost job growth and business expansion in all 5 boroughs. Slide. So now I'll go through each of the 18 proposals we have to change our zoning to meet our goals. At the end of the presentation, we'll also have a worksheet that we'll send over, and you can look at each of those proposals and opine on them individually. I'm going to go one by one through those 18 proposals. It seems like a lot, but I'll take it slow, and we'll be able to have a good conversation about that at the end. So goal 1, under the rubric of goal 1, what are the 6 proposals here? We want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow by lifting zoning barriers so that businesses can locate closer to the customers, as mentioned. In most cases, our zoning rules governing businesses have not been updated since the 60s, and it's past due to update our zoning to reflect and respond to today's economy. Our first 6 proposals do exactly that, making our zoning more simple, more adaptable, and more modern so businesses can more easily locate and grow. So what's the first proposal? Storefronts that are deemed non-conforming face an arbitrary 2-year time clock for reactivation, or else they have to remain vacant. A direct contributor to vacancy in our city. We are proposing to remove that time clock so vacant storefronts can be reoccupied. The second proposal. In many places of the city, we have similar zoning districts that are located along the same corridor or on opposite sides of the street, yet allow different kinds of businesses. This is an outdated and confusing set of rules that routinely holds back businesses' location or expansion. We are proposing to simplify the difference between similar kinds of zoning districts to make it easier for businesses to know where they can locate. Despite changes in technology and vastly different economy, our city zoning rules are stuck in the 1960s. This is proposal 3, with how they treat many kinds of maker businesses. We want to allow small scale, clean production, like a pottery studio, bakery, coffee roaster, jewelry maker, apparel designer, 3D printer, and things like that to locate it in commercial districts for the first time, instead of only being allowed in manufacturing districts. So again, pottery, coffee roasting, jewelry maker, apparel designer, things like that. So some of that light production that's only allowed in manufacturing districts now is going to be allowed in commercial districts under this proposal. If one of the clean production businesses, so proposal 4 under goal 1, if one of the clean production businesses in the last proposal wanted to move into an empty office building, today they would face rules that would require them to add additional loading docks, even if they don't need them, and even if the building can't physically accommodate them. We want to allow for older commercial buildings to change over time by not mandating a business tear apart the ground floor of a building to provide new loading docks. Proposal 5. Today, zoning allows for many buildings to have a mix of residential and commercial uses. But zoning sometimes restricts businesses from being able to use the upper floors. This limits options for new buildings to be built that contain both residences and businesses, or for older buildings to adapt over time. We want to enable renovations or new construction of mixed-use buildings in these places where it makes sense by allowing commercial uses at the same level or above residences, provided that complete separation between uses is maintained. Proposal 6. Our zoning hasn't updated the terms it uses to classify businesses in more than 60 years. And it's full of antiquated terms like shoddy manufacturing and typewriter repair. This makes it harder for newer business types like cell phone repair shops to know where they can locate. We're proposing to simplify and modernize the terms we use in zoning to classify businesses. Okay. So now we're going to move to goal number 2. So there's the 6 proposals in goal number 1. We have also a number of proposals under goal number 2. Under goal number 2, we want to support growing industries by reducing obstacles in zoning for emerging business types. Each of the industries highlighted in this second goal, urban agriculture, life sciences, nightlife, amusements, and home-based businesses, faces ambiguity or outdated restrictions in our zoning. And we want to address those obstacles so we can help emerging business types thrive across our city and create jobs across all 5 boroughs. So, proposal number 7. Businesses that want to operate indoor agriculture facilities such as vertical farming within commercial areas face uncertainty with today's zoning rules. We would clarify that indoor agriculture is allowed in C districts so more food can be grown closer to communities. Under proposal 8, life science laboratories face confusing and outdated rules that slow the development of new facilities. We would make it clear that labs without potential for environmental hazard are appropriate in office settings. And we'd also expand where an existing special permit can be used so labs might be able to locate in the future closer to research centers like hospitals and universities. Under proposal 9, restaurants and bars face confusing regulations on whether they can host concerts, dancing, comedy shows, or open mic nights. We're simplifying the rules so they're based on the size of the venue rather than the activity, so that you'd only see small venues in neighborhood commercial corridors and larger venues in places like Midtown. Proposal number 10. Zoning has outdated terms for defining experiential amusement businesses like virtual reality or children's arcades, and often restricts these kinds of businesses to Coney Island or the city's industrial areas. We would simplify and modernize how zoning treats amusements and recreational activities to make clear these businesses are allowed indoors and at a small scale on a neighborhood street and at a larger scale in office districts. Proposal number 11. Many New Yorkers start their businesses in their home, and zoning allows for a wide range of home business types, including lawyers, jewelry makers, and music teachers. The pandemic changed how New Yorkers work from home, but zoning hasn't kept up, prohibiting specific occupations like barbers or interior decorators and other restrictions that hold back business creation. We are proposing to enable entrepreneurship with modern rules for home-based businesses while keeping in place safeguards to ensure that any home-based businesses are being good neighbors. So those are the proposals under goal number 2. So now the final goal around fostering vibrant neighborhoods. Our third goal is to foster vibrant neighborhoods by ensuring businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Economic vibrancy isn't just about what occurs inside a building, but also how businesses interact with their surroundings. Inconsistency in existing streetscape regulations, or in some cases, a total absence of zoning rules, means there is no way to curb some of the worst outcomes of business activity spilling out into the public right-of-way or creating conditions that are unpleasant or even unsafe for passing pedestrians and cyclists. Our 3 proposals in this goal are designed to ensure that businesses contribute to active, safe, and walkable streets. Goal number 12. Streetscape conditions like long blank walls and drive-throughs break up retail streets and can create unpleasant and sometimes unsafe conditions for people walking past. But in vast parts of the city, there are no rules whatsoever to prevent new buildings that make conditions worse. We're proposing to create a consistent and easy to understand baseline set of rules for commercial ground floor design, ones that are more responsive in areas with greater pedestrian activity and more relaxed in the city's more auto-oriented corridors. Under proposal number 13, auto servicing and repair businesses are typically treated as industrial businesses and located far from retail streets and residential neighborhoods. But some exceptions exist that allows auto repair and storage facilities to spill out onto the sidewalk and neighborhood commercial streets, creating safety concerns for pedestrians. We are proposing to rationalize and consolidate the range of auto servicing uses in zoning into 2 categories: light and heavy vehicle repair and maintenance. Heavy vehicle maintenance must be licensed by the state DMV and would continue to be allowed in industrial areas, while light vehicle repair could locate elsewhere after appealing to the Board of Standards and Appeals. Under Proposal 14, zoning does not allow for delivery activity within buildings except in industrial areas, forcing the activity to occur on sidewalks and streets. We're proposing to create a new type of use in zoning called a micro-distribution facility and allow these businesses to locate a small scale in commercial areas, encouraging deliveries to shift to alternative modes of transportation and regulating the creation of local hubs for safe and sustainable deliveries to occur. All right, and here's our 4th goal. Again, 4 proposals under the 4th goal. Our 4th and final goal is to create opportunities for businesses to open by establishing new zoning tools that can boost job growth and business expansion. Our zoning resolution contains many kinds of tools which can be used to initiate a discretionary process to change an area's underlying regulations, including special permits from the Board of Standards and Appeals, City Planning Commission authorizations, and special permits and zoning districts. As we're seeking to modernize our city's zoning to support business location and growth, we also need to update our zoning toolkit so that businesses can have better access to pathways that can enable their expansion or adaptation. Our last 4 proposals all create new kinds of discretionary zoning tools for the future of economic success of our city. So, proposal number 15. Many large-scale residential developments, such as NYCHA campuses, are zoned as residence districts, meaning that retail, services, and maker spaces cannot easily locate, and placing residents of these developments further away from local goods and services. This proposal would create a CPC authorization to allow up to 15,000 square feet of commercial space in existing or new construction on a large-scale residential campus, giving residents greater access to basic necessities or the space to grow a new business. Under proposal number 16, some portions of New York City are not within walking distance of a local retail store like a bodega, and zoning has no pathways to potentially allow a new locally serving business to open. We're creating a discretionary pathway where a business could initiate a process to locate some portions, my apologies. We're creating a discretionary pathway where businesses could initiate a process to locate a new corner store, provided that the store does not generate any environmental concerns or traffic congestion. And proposal number 17, and after proposal 18, we'll pause for questions before we go to our existing conditions. Under proposal 17, in some instances, businesses lack options for waiving certain non-FAR related zoning rules. For instance, film studios often struggle to build sound stages because of certain zoning rules like yard requirements and setback heights. Or a clothing store might want to expand to occupy an empty second floor, but find that size limitations or location rules prevent them from doing so. We're expanding the zoning toolkit so businesses can initiate a process to waive some zoning rules on case-by-case basis. And finally, in some instances, it's our zoning districts, not discretionary pathways to modify them, that are obsolete, so zoning districts themselves. This is particularly true of our manufacturing or M district zoning designations. Currently, low-density options, physical design rules, and parking make it impossible to build loft-like buildings, even in areas where they already exist. This proposal will create a range of new job-intensive zoning districts at a range of densities and heights that expand the zoning toolkit for future rezonings. So with that, I'm going to pause for a bit because we do have some slides here that sort of localize this content and give us kind of a sense of what conditions are like in CB14. So I'll open it to some questions and we can sort of take it from there before we go into discussing some of those existing conditions, because I know we're up against that 30-minute mark.
Okay, we have a question from Glenn Wallen.
Thank you, but Steve Cohen and Carl had their hands up first. I can wait.
Oh, I didn't see the other hands. Okay, Steve, you have your hand up? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
I had a question about the number 16, the corner stores. I think it's a good idea. I think it makes sense. I've lived on kind of a residential stretch before, and the ground floor was like zoned for, daycare or medical facility where, I'm like, this would be a perfect place for a bodega. So there's a lot of intuitive attraction for me to that. But I'm just curious if there's been any thought about what that process might look like, just because I'm guessing, my instinct is there are a lot of folks who live on residential streets who would be like, no, bodegas don't belong here. Like, would that be something that would come for the community board? Has that been thought about at all or fleshed out in terms of what the process would actually look like to get a bodega in somewhere that previously wasn't zoned to allow bodegas? Thank you.
Okay. And if it's okay with you, I'll collect a few questions and then answer them as I'm able to do so. So the question was about, what is the process to get one of those bodegas at a location that it would newly be allowed in, and what would that mean for some of the residential character of some of those locations? Are there other questions?
Yeah, so Carl Henry Cesar, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Talisha. Thank you, Hanif, for the presentation. My question is about the feasibility and the execution of this. So A lot of changes are being proposed. It's very robust. Mayor Adams has proposed a 15%, basically budget cut to eliminate the gaps over 3 years. This involves a lot of cross-city agency coordination. I see the Department of Small Business Services is only mentioned twice in the document, the 600+ page one. So my question is exactly who's going to do the work when we have the potential of having a 15% budget cut, over the next few years? That's my question.
So who's going to do the work, and how is this feasible in the light of the budget of proposed budget cuts?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm next. This is Glenn Wolin. I have a few, starting with number 9, nightlife, that you're going to be allowing small places to become clubs. How's that going to be dealing with possible noise complaints in residential neighborhoods?
Okay.
Number 2 was number 7, urban agriculture. That means a lot of watering. And how do you ensure that the buildings aren't going, leaking and damaging whatever might be below it? The 12, better ground floors. You didn't give us any idea what that actually means. Just no blank walls. I'd like to have some idea of what the zoning is actually proposing. And finally, number 13, what is the difference between regular vehicle repair and light vehicle repair? Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. The question before the light and heavy vehicle repair, which proposal were you referring to there?
That's number 12.
Number 12.
Yeah, but the ground floors, no blank walls.
Mm-hmm. So what do we mean exactly when we're talking about no blank walls or better street conditions? And then the difference between heavy and light vehicles. Okay, so let's start with the question about.
Hanif,
Oh,
before you
yeah.
start answering, there's another
yeah.
question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greg Alvarez has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, if I could just add 2 more questions there. So, question about the micro distribution facilities. It looks like it's the as of right cutoff is based on a square footage basis, and so just wondering, in terms, I think related to some of the other questions, in terms of enforcement, these places aren't necessarily tied to square footage in all instances. So, just in terms of traffic, in terms of vehicles that would be in the area, what's intended to be in place for enforcement purposes, whether or not that's another layer of licensure for these types of facilities or the like. What would be the plan there? And then I'll just add one more question related to the relaxation on the vacancy rule. I'm just wondering how relaxed it actually will be, particularly in instances where, say, uses have not been in place for much longer than 2 years. I know the target is pandemic-related vacancies, but what about longer-term vacancies and whether or not that would come into play as well? So I'll leave it at there. Thank you.
Yeah. I can answer a few, or we can take more. I'm comfortable either way. I
just want to make sure. Binyomin, I hope I got that right. Binyomin Bendet, you have a question? You can go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. It's Alicia. I have 2 more questions to just add. One, in terms of goal 1, number 2, when you have things clustered from each other, just trying to understand if we can get an example of that for better clarity. The second question was in terms of amusements, goal 2, number 10. I think Glenn kind of touched on that a little bit, but how would we see it more, for example, practically in our neighborhoods? It seems like a good idea actually to bring more businesses, bring more amusements into our neighborhoods and to make it a little closer to us, but just trying to see how that process will play out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have a question from Florencia.
Thank you. Just wanted to know, where would the other mechanics be placed? If the ones that are dealing with lighter duties.
Okay.
The ones that we're dealing with, kind of similar to the light and heavy vehicles. Where would the areas serving the light vehicles be placed under the proposal?
Right. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions that I see for now. All the raised hands that I see for now. So you can go ahead.
And I'll stick around until we're satisfied with everyone having asked a question. And if I can't answer something tonight, I will send an email and we'll circle up with an answer to Sean and others. So on proposal, so the first question was about how we're going to locate those bodegas, what the processes will be there. And Lucia, I'll defer to you if I can't answer one of these, but it's my understanding that we'll have a CPC authorization where a business could initiate a process to locate a new corner store up to 2,500 square feet, provided that the store does not generate any environmental concerns or traffic congestion. So the short answer there is that there'll be a new track for CPC, City Planning Commission authorization. The business could initiate the process up to 2,500 square feet, provided there's no environmental impact or concern or around congestion. So there will be a kind of licensing or authorization track there.
I just want to add one more thing to that. The community, as part of the authorization process, the project will be referred out for your input and to opine on these applications as well.
Okay, that's great. Community boards will also be involved. I'm going to save the next question for a little bit later. It's a little bit challenging for me to answer because the budget cuts are kind of a larger question. But I will try to get to it. Under nightlife, so there will be the Office of Nightlife here. We'll try to see about the impact that this will have kind of on the local communities. So nightlife venues over 200 people would continue to be limited to higher density or industrial zoned areas of the city. Venues would still be subject to permitting and enforcement by other agencies such as DOB, SLA, and FDNY. I believe there will be some MEND NYC involvement as well to kind of navigate some of the issues that happen between the venues and the local communities. So these are kind of some of the practices that will be in place to ensure that the nightlife doesn't interfere with the ability of local communities to live sort of comfortably. The 200-person capacity is the current size allowed for eating and drinking establishments with live music and posted showtimes. Today, just not allowed to dance. So as a practical matter, reducing the number would mean potentially making thousands of existing legal businesses non-compliant. So the department thinks that 200 is a good size. It's about the same size of a 25 wide storefront space, which is what we see throughout commercial streets. It doesn't mean a small space can't be loud or exhibit other quality of life concerns. So it absolutely can, and we suggest reporting issues to 311 or working with the MEND program to resolve these. We do not believe smaller legal store size is the solution. I can also provide a more detailed answer on the nightlife enforcement question as well. But Lucia, you're welcome. Please jump in if I'm missing something.
This is kind of a zoning also the initiation of this was actually through the cabaret laws. If you're familiar, those laws were repealed several years ago in terms of allowing spaces to dance, including restaurants. And this proposal is, though like the legal parameters to which the cabaret law was repealed, zoning still actually had definitions within it. And so this is actually a process in making sure that, the electeds who all voted on the repeal of the cabaret law, that this is then carried on as well into our zoning.
On the urban agriculture, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but it's not clear what the change is and how that's going to affect the neighborhoods. You're saying it's still above 200, but what is this changing? And that's the concern I have about how it affects residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
I
Understood.
appreciate that question. We're currently the areas to which we have restaurants and like venues, they're able to locate in commercial areas. But you're not allowed to say, stand up and maybe if there's a salsa night, dance salsa. This is that in those areas, salsa and being able to dance would be illegal under zoning. And so this is that kind of response to allowing people to then participate in dance. Also, there are antiquated rules about stand-up comedy, other areas, but we definitely have heard from many communities concerns about enforcement and noise. So that is something we are actively collaborating with not only DOB and I believe DEP, who works with the noise aspect. So it's something that we are currently working on, and we will definitely are happy to follow up with more information as well.
Thank you.
The question around urban agriculture, the answers that I'm seeing refer to sort of hydroponics and things like that, that type of irrigation. But if there is a desire to have more clarity around how the irrigation would happen and what possible kind of mitigation or impact that could have on sort of flooding or leaking or things like that, I can follow up with you and inquire with our team about that. But it's my understanding that it would be a lot of the irrigation would be hydroponic in nature. Based on what I know about hydroponics, it's not like irrigating, soil that's leaking everywhere. But I can ask and check in on that.
I'm more interested in if an entire building is devoted to urban agriculture, then that's fine. Then whatever happens within the building, it's not going to affect anyone else. But if it's being proposed in such a way that it's possible for the top 5 floors to be utilized as such, and maybe having a store or something underneath it, that's where the concern comes from.
Okay. So the other units within that building, how would they be possibly impacted?
That's correct.
Yeah.
If that's in fact allowed, which is not clear. Thank you.
I just want to acknowledge that Nina Sagbeer, she does have a question, or her hand is up. Nina, honey, would it be okay if she just comes in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm a CB14 member. I just want to point out to Joel that Whole Foods down on 3rd Street and 3rd Ave has a hydroponic, whole big huge garden on top of the building there, and it seems to be doing just fine. So and there are other, that's the only one that I've actually visually seen, because if you go up to the 2nd floor you can see it through the doorways. There are others across the city already, so it's not a new thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd also add that this proposal also includes florists and their regulations on florists. But thank you for that. There's also other indoor agriculture. The one you referenced, the Whole Foods, is actually in a manufacturing zone. So this proposal is to be able to extend that to commercial areas at a certain size. Thank you. Appreciate that example.
Okay. So I can get better clarity for you around what the exact design guidelines. I think they're still being worked on. Lucia, do you know about what specific design guidelines we're talking about when we talk about improving those streetscapes? It's my understanding that we're going to, prevent those blank wall conditions or other types of conditions that negatively impact the street front. Are there other more specific design guidelines that we have with regard to goal number 12?
Yes. So outside of Manhattan and a few special districts, most commercial streets lack design rules, as Hanif had mentioned. And so what this proposal is to, create a set of standards for our streetscapes. And the rule is to treat 3 different geographies. There's existing special districts, and then other commercial streets in the quote unquote transit zone, commercial streets outside of the transit zone, and those centered around auto-centered locations such as malls, highway ramps, and they're all treated a little differently. And for auto-centered areas, it would be regulating parking location, the length and consistency of blank walls, and have more pedestrian locations to look at in the ground floor, and regulations on continuity and activation. So those are some of the high levels. As a part of this, we can actually, talk more about the very specific proposals and, present on those. This is meant to be a high-level summary so that we can, answer some of these questions initially, and hopefully, come back as many times as the board feels is necessary to explain things in further detail. But it is noted that streetscapes and being very clear on where those would be located. We have slides further we can flip to as well, if time allows, as to what we talk about when we talk about the 3 geographies. But that is still a high-level overview of the streetscape rules, but happy to dive in further if that's something we want to do with our time today or a different time.
I made a note to circle up with some of that specific information about the design guidelines if it should be required. On the question regarding proposal 13 around light and heavy vehicles, so heavy repair, those would be things. Heavy repair are those registering with the New York State DMV and would only be allowed in C8 and M districts. So heavy repair would be allowed, continue to be allowed in C8 and M districts. Light repair would be allowed in Cs, but only if there is a BSA review of a site plan to ensure that uses won't spill out. And existing businesses wouldn't be affected by this. They'd be sort of grandfathered in.
You have any examples of what light repair might be?
Examples of light repair. I can circle up with examples of light repair, but I don't have them at the time. But what I'm thinking of when I think of this proposal are some of the conditions that we see along Coney Island Avenue today, where you see, a lot of the businesses spilling into the streetscape. So avoiding conditions like that is part of what this proposal aims to address. But we can provide a more kind of detailed example of what those light and heavy repairs would entail. But presumably things that are not registered as such with the New York State DMV. but we can circle up with more information about that. Do we have any other information about that, Lucia?
We'll follow up again, as you mentioned, on just exactly I know that there are, differences between, say, painting a car versus changing tires on a car. And so that is, and, size of vehicles. I want to make sure we're giving you the exact type of vehicles that we're talking about when we talk about heavy and light. So we'll make sure we get that to you as well.
Hanif,
Yeah.
can we add in a couple more questions, comments
Yeah.
now? Okay, Sean Campbell has her hand up, and then Benyomin Bendet has his hand up after Sean goes. So
Sure thing.
Thanks. Just first of all, a quick housekeeping point, just to remind everybody to wait to be called on by the chairs of the committee, co-chairs of the committee. And then my question, just as a follow-up on your comment, Hanif, about the change in the auto repair rules would not impact existing businesses, which suggests that anything existing would be grandfathered in. And I'm wondering if that's true we already have auto repair and body repair and mechanic shops that are grandfathered in that don't comply with zoning. And so anything that's already non-compliant and already grandfathered, would it be grandfathered, or would those be considered for displacement?
Yes. Yeah.
You mean
It would
like?
be- Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucia.
I have a couple that have like variances, and I think, Lucia, you know what I'm talking about. So go ahead.
No, and that is going to, as a part of this proposal, I want to make sure in terms of, variances, I want to follow up on that specific point, but to kind of the general existing businesses, there would be considered, they would be able to stay under the current regulations. And go ahead. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, just want to make sure
okay.
that we're clear on the language. Existing compliant businesses would not be disturbed. Existing non-compliant businesses might be disturbed.
With the variance as in particular, I'd like to follow up on to make sure, but
we can talk offline because this is pretty specific.
Yeah, no, but it's understandable, and we wanted to create an avenue for specifically as it applies right now to new auto repair shops to go through the BSA to prove that their operations would be contained within their zoning lot, as Hanif mentioned, to maybe prevent these further conditions from happening. But yes, we'll follow back up. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Benyomin, you're up.
Hi, thank you. I just had a comment on 13. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I'm just not understanding. But in terms of spilling out for the light repairs, I just want to comment that a lot of these repair shops rely on a heavy volume of cars at the same time, not allowing them to spill out, or maybe I'm not understanding the definition of spilling out, but not allowing them to spill out on the streets kind of causes them to lose business, which is the opposite of this, the point of this program. And there is another issue of if they needed more places to park those cars or to move those cars, it creates another barrier of entry in terms of higher investment. So I was wondering if maybe I'm misunderstanding something, or if there's something that the city can do to help with these issues.
Yeah, it's a good question. My understanding is that the rules are making a distinction between heavy and light. Heavy would continue to be allowed to operate in the C8 and M districts where it's currently allowed to operate. But then a new category, those light businesses, would now also be allowed to operate in more areas, more C areas, provided that so in areas that they currently cannot operate in, they would be allowed to operate in those new areas, those C areas outside of C8 and M, provided they didn't spill out. So if there was a business that is currently in a C8 area, they're operating a certain way, they're going to continue operating that way, but that new category of businesses can go to the C area. I don't know if does that kind of can clarify.
I'm not sure it does, because you're still saying as long as they don't spill out. What does spilling out mean?
Okay.
So that would mean, yes, on the street and sidewalks is what the spill out would be defined as in these lighter auto repair areas. And I just also wanted to note, we are taking note of, the proposals that we would love to come back and talk more about as well, to the same audience, to different audiences, and bring more detail to. We also, we stopped short because we wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions, but we have like applicability maps as a part of this presentation that I'm sure, Hanif will send after this meeting, that includes maps of where these proposals are applicable in specifically CD14. So,
Yep, that's right.
Okay, thank you for that. Elizabeth, Dennis, do you want to go ahead and ask your question now, or do you want to wait until?
Yeah, I think it's kind of related to the auto businesses, so I'm curious if it's helpful to keep it together, maybe.
Yep.
I guess just when you're saying you can expand auto, basically this is an option to make certain types of auto repairs done in more places. This seems, is the goal here to try to reduce some of the spill out from the heavy zones it's already allowed in? Because I will just note that, like, as someone who lives along Coney Island Avenue and walks up and down it literally every day, it's extremely hostile, and it does, shape kind of where I choose to go and what businesses I choose to frequent. So, I think about the current way that auto repair is done off, and with that spill out, that it does, harm other sorts of businesses and economic opportunities throughout, our district and the city. And I guess just like, is the goal that allowing it to be happening in more places would be reducing some of that spill out in the existing places? Is there a way to maybe try to tighten up that spill out in existing places? Because it is very dangerous, as mentioned. But it's, just also kind of as a on the flip side of that, though, if you're in a car, it's much easier to bring your car to an auto repair shop a little farther away. It's not obvious to me that this is particularly necessary to make it, closer to more locations, because you can drive there, whereas that's less easy, say, with a bike that would need to get repaired, because then you're walking this large bike or you're trotting it through the subway or buses or something, and so forth. So I guess just wanted to kind of know what the thinking behind this was, because I kind of see both both pros and cons to this issue, and wanted to know if there was more information on it.
Yeah, no, this is good. I've made a note of the question. And I definitely have walked up and down the corridor that you've described many times, and I've witnessed, and our team has gone out there and has witnessed those street conditions. They're not great. So we've made a note here, and definitely the point about kind of why is it necessary to have this like kind of auto repair when people are driving to the destination. So we'll circle up with some more detail there. Lucia, you want to add anything to that before we?
Yeah, I'll just add. So this proposal, we're talking about auto repairs as of right in high, like M districts and high C8 districts. We're talking, and then in the discussion of adding to other C districts, we're saying that they have to go through a BSA process. So you'd actually, before your new businesses, before they would even be able to locate in other commercial areas, they'd actually have to go to the BSA and kind of show the business configuration, the pedestrian experience, make sure that that, as we had mentioned before, hopefully not to confuse again, but that they would operate within their zoning law and not make the street conditions negative. So those are that's the kind of separation. We're actually adding a process to make sure that there is a little bit of consideration when it comes to pedestrian experience in other C districts besides what's allowed as of right in the higher density districts, CA districts.
Well, thank you for that. I just want to make sure, Hanif and Lucia, you still have some more presentation to go, right?
I actually, sorry, Hanif, not to jump in, but I actually wanted to, hearing earlier about the 600 pages of zoning text, and hearing, we hear you, it's a lot of text, a lot of pages to read through. There's actually a really helpful tool that you'll, as this presentation is circulated, these are the applicability maps we can go through as well, but I wanted to show the tool here in our appendix section. We have each proposal and then a shortcut to where they're referenced in the 600 pages of text, because we know reading through the entire document is extensive, can take many hours, as it has taken many hours to create. So we wanted to I wanted to quickly show this before we go back to our applicability map. You'll receive these slides. So,
and it will be annotated as well, because I'm not I'm not a lawyer, a legal professional, and so I benefit a lot from that annotation also.
Okay, great. Thanks for that tidbit. So I'll just go ahead and call on Glenn Wallen. You have your hand up?
Yes, thank you very much. What I don't see here is something that addresses the growing electric vehicle market, which is rather different than regular cars, seeing they don't use gasoline or oil, the toxic chemicals that generally you want to separate from residences. And of course, the whole idea of charging stations, I don't see anything here about that either. And as that market keeps growing, it would be a good idea to address it in some manner, I should think, unless it is and it's just not presented today. That's my comment. Thank you.
No, this is a great question. A lot of the proposals around electric charging stations, electrification, we've chosen to add in the zoning for carbon neutrality text amendment that was presented earlier. But I can find the relevant sections of that proposal that can answer some of your questions, and we can include those in the answers that we send over to the community board about that topic. So to my knowledge, there's no specific conversation around electrification and charging stations in this proposal, but they are in the previous one about ZCN. And the charging station will be allowed in new locations. They would be allowed in new areas as primary uses where there's previously accessory uses and so on. There's a lot of new allowances associated with that in the carbon neutrality proposal.
Thank you.
There was a question, and I can keep working through the other questions that folks have raised. We can circle up on the vacancy rule relaxation to see what the amount of time would be. Lucia, do you know? I know we're moving on from the 2 years, but do you have guidance on kind of the amount of time that we would allow?
Mm-hmm. It is brought up in previous sessions as well, the context of, how do we know that look at this spot, there was a store, if we're talking years past. And that's something that we are actively working on with DOB and those who host the record of occupancy for these buildings, and something we would be more than happy to follow up on as well.
So we'll get some more information about.
I wanted to ask really quick. We have a few other questions that we haven't touched on yet, but we also do have a couple of other slides we'd love to present. Wanted to throw it to the community board if you'd like us to continue answering questions. We've written all of them down. We can respond in an email format if that along with the other responses, if we'd like to show some of these maps.
Lucia, those slides and maps are district specific?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll leave it up to you all.
So yes, I agree. I was just about to ask, especially looking at the time. So maybe you can just continue your presentation, and then if you would just respond to the questions via email. That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. These are great questions, and we're never going to stop fielding those questions. So even if after this presentation you've got one comes to your mind, you just want to send it our way. We're gonna continue answering as many of them as we possibly can. So Lucia, let's move and look at some of those existing conditions. So we have here a little bit of statistical analysis that our team conducted. About 2,390 storefronts were identified in District 14. 250 vacancies, so it's about 11%. There's 12% in Brooklyn, 12% citywide, so it's really consistent with the citywide and borough-wide numbers. We can see the services, retail, food and dining, and community facility and other distribution pretty evenly distributed between those four quarters, with sort of institutional jobs forming the lion's share, with sort of office, industrial, local services, and public administration forming the rest of those 37,000 jobs that are located in the area. So we can move on to some of the other conditions in the area. And so this is a map that shows proposals 4, 6, 17, and 18, if I'm not mistaken, Lucia. So we see basically, we'll start disaggregating these in the coming. Should we focus on this one, or should we start disaggregating some of the?
No, just at a high level, the proposals listed here would apply to the entire district in terms of, say, modernizing dock rules, simplifying use terms, rationalizing a process for the BSA and CPC, and new types of zoning for job-intensive locations. So these parts of the proposal, which are listed, you can reference here, apply to the entire community board, and then Hanif will take it away for specific districts within the community board.
That's right. Okay. So we'll start with map C1. Let's start with the C1 district here. Within C1 districts in our area, removing the arbitrary distinction between C1 and C2 districts. So existing C1 districts would allow for the same mix of uses as in C2 districts. We would allow small-scale clean production businesses such as food and beverage makers, jewelry makers, or apparel makers up to 5,000 square feet. Commercial uses would be able to occupy the second floor of mixed-use buildings, able to fill space that a doctor's office might leave empty. A simplified and modernized citywide use framework for classifying businesses and zoning. Urban agriculture businesses, which can operate in a greenhouse today, could operate within a building instead. Bars and restaurants with entertainment that has a cover charge or specified show time could operate up to 200-person capacity, so roughly the size of a standard 25-foot storefront space. Experiential amusements and recreational businesses like virtual reality or arcades would be allowed up to 10,000 square feet. This is all in C1 districts. Light motor vehicle repair and maintenance shops would be allowed, but only after seeking that BSA approval that we mentioned. And then the micro distribution facilities would be allowed up to 2,500 square feet. And that would be to encourage safer and more sustainable delivery methods within a neighborhood. We will circle up on that answer regarding the enforcement with respect to the micro distribution.
And although, we're not able to zoom in, once you get the PowerPoint, you'll be able to zoom in, but these parts that are here in orange, these are what the locations that would be impacted by this proposal. So it's very faint, but it's only a handful of places. I shouldn't say only. It's a handful of places in CB14 that you can imagine these proposals applying to.
Yeah. So the C2 districts, as you can see, a lot more prevalent. You can see some along Church Avenue. You can see them towards the east near Flatbush. So they're more prevalent. In C2 districts, the kinds of changes that are being proposed, a lot of them I mentioned previously that would apply to the C1s as well, again with the small scale food and beverage makers occupying the second floor, and all of those kind of elements that I mentioned with respect to the C1s would now apply to the C2s. Effectively, there'd be no difference between a C1 and a C2 now. Let's go on to the C4 districts. In the C4 districts, we'd remove the arbitrary distinction between C4 and C6 districts. C4 districts would allow for the same mix of uses as in C6 districts. We'd allow, again, those small scale production. We would modernize loading dock rules so buildings can more easily adapt over time. Commercial uses would occupy the same floor or floors above residences in mixed-use buildings, provided that a complete separation exists between the residential and non-residential parts of the building. Urban agricultural businesses can operate in the building. Again, the same rules around bars and restaurants. But bars and restaurants with entertainment that has a cover charge or specified showtime would operate without a capacity limitation in the C4 districts, but are still subject to existing rules in some places that require them to be under 200-person capacity if within 100 feet of a residence district. So a little bit of a difference in the nightlife or the entertainment rule. Experiential amusements and recreational businesses like virtual reality or arcades would be allowed. New design rules would ensure that buildings contribute to their surroundings. New light motor vehicle repair and maintenance shops would be allowed after that BSA approval. And then again, within micro distribution facilities, but here up to 5,000 square feet on the ground floor with additional allowances above. So a little bit heavier with the C4s. C5, really not relevant here. There are no C5 districts here that I can see. Actually, we can toggle those and make sure that, do we see any C5s there? It's a little bit faint. But
No, there isn't any C5s. Yeah.
I understand that. C6, again, very rare. We won't go into the C6 districts. So for the R districts, okay, within residential districts, here are the kinds of changes that are being proposed. In some residence districts, vacant storefronts can become reoccupied regardless of how long they're empty. In other residence districts, vacant storefronts face a 2-year time lock for reactivation. The proposal removes that time clock in places where it exists. So where there is a 2-year time clock, that would be removed. Modernize rules for home occupations to enable a wider range of home-based businesses. Relax the cap on the portion of your home you can use for business activities. Allow you to legally register up to 3 employees to be associated with your home business. Important relief for contractors like electricians or startups that use their home as their business address. Will maintain existing rules that ensure you're still being a good neighbor by not having exterior signage, abiding by noise and environmental rules, and not selling anything you didn't produce on site. Availability of a new CPA authorization allows up to 15,000 square feet of commercial space in existing or new construction on a large-scale residential campus, giving residences greater access to basic necessities or the space to grow a new business. I don't believe we have large-scale residential campuses like Kaincha campuses in this district. Availability of new CPA authorization to allow businesses to apply to create a new corner store up to 2,500 square feet and located within 100 feet of an intersection. So we'll see more bodegas, more in-home businesses, and more kind of different types of uses within residences, as long as they don't have kind of a noxious impact on their neighbors. Very few M districts, I would say, within CB14, but there are some pockets. We'd have, again, those modernized loading dock rules. We'd have businesses would have access to a more rationalized waiver process to seek zoning modifications through the BSA or CPC. And we'd have new types of commercial and manufacturing zoning districts would be added to the zoning toolkit, so private applicants or the city could use them in future rezonings. That's a little in the weeds, but if there is an interest in the impact on the M districts, we can circle up and come back with more detail. The only special district that really coincides with CB14 is the Special Ocean Parkway District that would theoretically be relevant to this rezoning. That one we're not seeing any impact. The zoning for economic opportunity proposal would not change any regulations as a result of.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think Sean Campbell has a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Because there is another special permit district in CB14, which is bordered by Nostrand. I can't remember Nostrand. I'm sorry, but it's in the southeast corner of the district. Nostrand on the bottom. There's Avenue P, Kings Highway. Then it goes up. You know what I'm talking about? It's the 62-722 district. Is that not special purpose district? Is it not impacted?
That I can look into that one. It's my understanding that one refers to kind of like homes and home expansions and things like that. So it wouldn't be impacted by this resolution, but I can triple check and just kind of make sure and get back to you with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So those are sort of the area specific guidelines or the implications and applications of this rule in various kind of specific parts of the district. So now with that, we'll kind of close out by reviewing the timeline again. So after more than a year, getting in front of as many audiences as we can, presenting our ideas for solutions to the problems businesses are facing today, getting your feedbacks and questions about the proposal. We are in the process of going before every community board in the formal public review. This process will culminate in a city council vote sometime next spring. So with that, we don't have any more slides. This is basically what the timeline is going to look like. We've got the referral to public hearing, City Planning Commission vote, all the way to City Council vote. And it's my understanding that similar to last time, the CPC will be getting the community board sort of feedback up until the vote, although we encourage folks to send it before the vote to give the commissioners time to sort of read the feedback and incorporate and things like that. But I'll be in close communication with Sean to make sure that the board is well aware of the ideal times to submit those and so on. But we got a lot of really great questions tonight. If there are additional ones that came out of our conversation around the application, if you want to look at those maps again, please let me know. And we can go back to sort of answering more questions for folks tonight.
I'm just checking to see. Oh, Sean, do you have your hand up again?
Is there an exact date that it was certified that we have the 60-day review from? When did the clock start ticking?
The 30th, right? Is that?
So the community board will receive the letter officially, and that will be the start of the referral period. I don't believe that has been sent out yet. So the referral period hasn't begun until that official letter has started, but all of the materials should be available to the community board on Zap. So everything should be there to review. We'll just send out that official letter and then, yeah, the clock starts.
And then just to follow up, the City Planning Commission vote, once that is scheduled, that date that it is scheduled for should be the date that the vote takes place. because you did a little switcheroo on the carbon neutrality. You moved it earlier, and there was no public announcement of that 2-day and 6-hour earlier vote, and it wasn't right. So I think you're all on notice on that, but I just wanted to say it out loud and on the record. Thanks.
Message received on that. We'll communicate early, often, many times when it comes to those votes, and we want to make sure that you know exactly when it is, that we know exactly when it is. And there's one thing we don't like at the Department of City Planning, and that's surprises. So we won't be surprising you, and yeah.
Word. I mean, you're called planning, for goodness sake.
Yes. And that's, we're encouraging the 60-day review. Of course, we know it's a lot to get through. So yeah, as just echoing Hanif. I did want to say before we get, any other questions, but as a part of this, we know it's a huge proposal. We know that there's a lot of different moving parts that, some might be really excited about, some less excited about. And as a part of that, Hanif will be following up with a worksheet that goes through each proposal that the community board can use as they submit their recommendation, to kind of go in further depth as to what needs to be changed, what the board really likes, and so on and so forth. So we can get as much information and detail about each proposal and your thoughts on it. So you'll be able to see that early with Hanif's follow-up.
Great, thank you for that. And just to let you know, Hanif, you have a lot of witnesses here tonight, so we all heard you say it. We all heard you say it.
Only need one.
So we have about 10 minutes left. So I don't know if you want to get back to answering maybe one or two more of the questions that you have. I don't see anybody's hand up, so you can just head back to your question list.
I think that let's see which ones that we didn't. I think we addressed all the ones that we were able to address with the information that we have. Let's see. Long-term vacancies, we talked about that. Any more on your end, Lucia, that maybe we can go into a little bit more depth on?
Yes, I wanted to highlight there was a question about the C1, C2 cross street examples. One that we have in the presentation that is a little further north is along Court Street in CD6. A good example is that there is a really small movie theater on one side that wouldn't be allowed on the other side of the street. Same with certain types of bicycle repair would be allowed on the C2 side of the street, but not on the C1 side of the street. And it's on the exact same street in the exact same context. And it seems as though, being able to have those businesses on either side of the street makes sense in terms of, uses. And that's kind of an example. And of course, happy to follow up with maybe if there is an example in CB14, a CB14 specific example as well.
We can find more and send those over as well if people want.
Okay, well, I don't see anybody that has a raised hand. So do you want to, Hanif, Lucia, do you want to just close out? We have about 8 minutes left in our meeting.
I'm seeing one hand. Is that?
Sorry, Greg, my co-chair.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't
right.
see it.
Okay. All right.
There was just something that came up in the mapping. It seemed pretty stark to me, and that's the, we're predominantly zoned residential, and the home occupation standards may have a not insignificant impact on our district. And since the cutoff for the new cutoff for home occupation seems to be square footage or 49% of square footage, we do have a lot of large homes in our district. And so I was just wondering if you could speak to that in terms of you know, is there any consideration of capping or anything like that to sort of maybe hem in potential abuses of that particular standard?
Yeah.
I just wondering about that. And also, I did ask a question previously about the micro distribution facilities. I don't know if I got a clear answer on that in terms of the as of rights and, you know,
Yeah.
that, because the related question to that was, I didn't see it as a defined term, and I know there are a lot of new defined terms for use categories. You're using the industrial code in some instances, which seems to be to be beyond the zoning code. So I'm kind of curious how the administration, maybe on the DOB level, is going to happen with all these new use categories and interpretations. And is there any thought of providing any further guidance and further definitions on that front? But
Yeah.
I'll end there. Thanks.
Quickly, Hanif, can I jump into this for the second
Yeah.
question really quick? So the new simplified use categories are actually based on a federal categorization called NAICS. So it's something that, you know, isn't new. It's something that has been used and is expanded upon, you know, at a federal level as new industries arise and or are better suited in different categories. So that is, you know, where we're getting these terms from. And we are working very closely with DOB to make sure that these use groups were able to, we also talked about enforcement and of course, DOB being the enforcement agency for a lot of these, we're working very closely with DOB to make sure that it's very clear the use group changes, I shouldn't say changes, the use group definitions in our work with DOB. So. And then to the first question,
about enforcement, is that?
Home occupations.
Oh, home occupations, yes. I don't have an answer beyond kind of sharing the rules as they're being proposed, but it's something that we can note. And I think that one of the kind of nuances of what you're saying are sort of related to areas where there are many homes that are larger, for example. And so what kind of considerations are going to be there? We'll look into getting some answers around the question you asked about, you know, how do we prevent this from being abused or becoming, you know, a quality of life concern for residents? So I've noted all of those elements as well.
Okay, Carl, I see your hand. You're up.
All right, thank you again. Oh yeah, I just remembered I had two quick questions. So one of them, both of these are from the document. And so in the beginning of the document, the annotated text amendment, it has a bit where they talk about caretaker. So I was interested, this isn't urgent, this is just something to follow up on. I was just interested in what is the definition of a caretaker, because in that section, when I finished reading it, I don't believe it defined caretaker. So I was just curious what that is. And then the second thing that's not urgent for today, at some point to follow up, is just that there was a comment, specifically Z6, that was mentioning something about how there was a percent overlay and I didn't get it. So I didn't know if it was saying if you had a residential that had some percentage commercial, therefore it would be considered more commercial versus residential. I didn't understand what I read. And so I'm just flagging the comment in specific. It's comment Z6. And so just clarity on what Z6 is saying, that would be very helpful. So that's it for me.
Okay. So I made a note. So the comment Z6 and then defining caretaker. So that'll be in our write-up that we'll send over.
Maybe it's just that we spend a lot of time reading zoning text, but it brings us me great joy to hear your comments on the annotated zoning text. So feel free to keep those coming as well.
And any of these specific proposals that you think, listen, this is like, there's just so many questions about a specific one. We'd like, you know, Hanif to come back, or, you know, both of us to come back, and we can like spend some time just talking about that one after doing like a really deep dive on it and getting very granular. So we can do that. We can come back as many times as needed just to make sure that we have a lot of clarity there. But I know that we're up against time, so I don't want to take more time than you've given us tonight. Really, really appreciate it. These questions are going to mean that the proposal is better and the answers that we provide are more clear, both to ourselves and to others. So really appreciate the time that you're spending tonight. I kind of hear everything, again, that Sean is saying. I have a big "don't mess this up" comment next to the vote date. So we're gonna do right by that. And we look forward to getting you some of these answers and, coming back and talking about this more. I'm excited about this. I personally like, well, I used to like dancing, but now I mostly do VR, which is more commensurate with my age and physique. So I'm looking forward to these uses coming to more parts of our city, so we'll be able to enjoy them. With that, want to wish y'all a very good evening, and thanks for your patience with our tech issues and with us sort of working through this proposal.
Well, thank you, Hanif and Lucia. You've been very helpful. And we look forward to hearing back from you on some of those other questions. And thank you to everybody for joining us tonight on behalf of Gregory Alvarez, who I didn't purposely miss his raised hand.
No offense taken.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to Sean for, as usual, for putting this all together and helping us in whatever way we needed. And as Steve put in the chat, go vote on Tuesday. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night.